Hello and welcome back to the RevOps Show. Today there are a lot of questions and articles out there around alignment and how you can get your teams aligned. People have even questioned if alignment's a myth because it seems impossible to achieve. Well, alignment is no myth, but it is also not like what people picture it to be. Jess and Doug go in depth today on the topic and show you how you can be aligned even when it doesn't feel that way. You'll also hear some new takes from Doug on the subject. So, what are we waiting for? Let's get on with the show.
Jess.
Doug.
Can you believe it's December already?
It feels like it's December.
What is happening?
All kinds of things. It is crazy with a capital K.
You know, I think you told me when you first talked about coming here that you were going to strive to be indispensable.
I think I did tell you that, actually. That was pretty ballsy.
Do you regret that yet?
I mean,
remember, we have an audience, so you have to tell the truth.
No, I don't regret it. Not most of the time. There are some days.
So I was talking to somebody. I'm not going to name the name of the company, but it was one of the early collabs that we did. Begins with a G, ends with an N.
Okay.
Remember back then?
I do. I remember those days.
Remember, we thought we knew what we were doing back then?
I do.
And now think back to what we did.
Oh, man.
And you are not like, and they referred us another piece of business.
I know. It's pretty crazy.
But you know what they say? They say if you can look back at where you were a year ago and you don't think you were stupid a year ago, then you didn't grow this year.
Is that what they say?
That's what they say.
Well, I feel better now.
So, Jess, I feel like you're trying to work your way through my greatest hits with today's topic.
Really? Am I?
Well, what are we talking about today, Jess?
I knew it would be a topic you would be excited about.
It's a word.
Yeah. I want to talk about alignment, and specifically alignment between sales, marketing, and success.
Why are you being obtuse? Should I be acute? Parallelogram? Alignment. Okay, great.
It's gonna be a very focused conversation. I can tell already.
Actually, Jess, I have I think I'm going to say something new today on this subject.
Are you? Are you going to talk about a chasm?
I will probably talk about a chasm, but that won't be new.
No, it won't. And I realize this is a little bit your greatest hits, but it's something that's been on my mind a lot lately, internally and for clients. So my first question for you is alignment a myth? Because it's this thing we're all striving for, right? I'm going to open that can of worms.
So do me a favor, ask your second question first on the list that you gave.
Okay, why is alignment important?
I don't know, Jess, why is alignment important?
I knew as soon as you asked me to ask this, you were going to flip it back on me. Because it is important. That's why, Doug. There we go. No, it's important because it avoids frustration. It avoids, I should say, bad frustration. It avoids confusion. It makes sure that everybody's striving toward the same outcome.
What's the difference between the team with the worst record going to the last game that has a fight break out in practice and the team that's favored to win the Super Bowl that has a fight break out in practice the day before the Super Bowl?
I don't know. What's the difference?
Well, in the one that has the worst record, they're a dysfunctional locker room. And in the one that's just before they go to the Super Bowl, they're committed, they're passionate, they're all in, they're on edge, they're ready to go. The difference is one team won and the other team didn't. What you just said about alignment, which a lot of people say about alignment, reminds me of, follow your passion. If you do something that you love, you'll never feel like you work a day in your life. Well, I can tell you unequivocally, I do what I love, and many days feel like work.
I was going to say, it's not true.
Right. Does alignment eliminate frustration, avoid frustration? Does it avoid bad frustration? No, it doesn't.
I think it can.
No, I don't think you can avoid it.
You don't think you can avoid bad frustration?
No. The great philosopher Forrest Gump said shit happens.
It's true.
The great philosopher Mike Tyson says everybody has a plan until they get punched in the nose.
Also true.
You know what? You're going to lose games. Only one NFL team in history, at least modern history, has gone through the entire season undefeated.
Patriots?
Nope. Miami Dolphins.
Oh.
Patriots lost the Super Bowl that year.
Oh, that's right.
You're going to lose games.
Yeah.
Here's what I tell you. One of our values is play to win. What do I tell everybody? If you play to win, the only thing I can promise you is you're going to lose.
Yeah.
You'll have losses. The difference between a professional manager and a fan is fans go crazy for every loss. Fans play to win every game. Fans get mad at any loss. Professional coaches know we're going to lose some games. And by the way, I'm not playing for this game. I'm playing for the season. Like I remember one year, like the year after the Cubs won the World Series, Joe Madden did some questionable things in the playoffs and they got eliminated. But one of the things that I knew that Madden was doing was Madden wasn't playing to win that series. He was playing to get to the World Series. And if I remember correctly, he threw a pitcher that, was struggling, and he brought him in again. And it was like, look, you're not going to win the World Series if this guy doesn't get his game back together. So,
right.
You can try to avoid it and burn out this way or, so is alignment a myth? No, alignment's not a myth. I think, is the horizon a myth?
No.
Right. So the opposite of myth is not necessarily real, right? So alignment is an abstract concept. The horizon doesn't actually exist. There is actually literally no place where the sky meets the earth.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But it's an abstract. It's a concept.
Right.
And so, as my friend and one of my coaches in life, Dan Sullivan, says you get on the fastest motorcycle, you get in the fastest plane and go to the horizon. Doesn't matter how fast you go, you're never going to get there.
Right.
And so my issue with alignment is, well, I think alignment is a byproduct.
Okay.
Right. I think it's the what happens as a result of things. Because by the way, I can be absolutely in alignment. I can, here's what's funny. When I was a kid, I was in alignment with all my friends. You know what my mom said to me?
What?
If all your friends jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you too?
Yeah.
Right. That's alignment. I see images of no alignment. Everyone's going in completely different directions. And then the idea of alignment, everyone's going in the exact same direction.
Right.
Oh my God. I don't want everyone going in the exact same direction. There's no diversity. There's no perspective. There's no innovation. There's no creation. Right. And so, I mean, look, growing a business is hard. I'd love it. If someone can tell me it's not hard, please come on and tell me what the secret is.
Yeah.
God, I really awfully want to know. I mean, do we make it sometimes harder than it needs to be? Yeah, we probably do. Though I think that's part of the human condition. So, this idea of alignment, everyone's moving in lockstep. They even use the term military precision. Now, if the military is marching for parade, precision.
Yeah.
On the battlefield? Yeah. Oh my God, it's organized. It's not even, it's chaos.
Yeah.
And you know what? From a couple people that I've talked to, far more goes wrong than goes right. One of the things Jeff Bezos said, he said the difference between business and baseball. So the biggest thing you can do in baseball is you can hit a home run for 4 runs. Mm-hmm. In business, you can hit a 1,000,000-run homer. It's true in music. You know what we call those people? We call them one-hit wonders.
Yeah.
Right? Katrina and the Waves. Katrina's still doing fine. Every time Walking on Sunshine is played.
Yeah.
Right? So, being successful in business isn't even about being right more than not being right. It's about being right on, some of the right things. So, I don't think alignment is a myth. I think it's a real thing. When we talk about alignment between sales, marketing, and success, my question is, well, actually, why are we only aligning between sales, marketing, and success? There's many other aspects of the business that are required to work well to win. So why aren't we aligned with our operations? Mm-hmm. Right. Of course we want to be, but It's like I can't remember if on one of the episodes we talked about the fact that when we were talking about CRM implementation, that we always remind people, look, we're not here to win a CRM implementation award.
Yeah.
Right. Is the objective alignment, or is the objective something else?
And that's where you mean that alignment's the byproduct, not the.
I think that when you look after the fact and you look backwards, you can say that team, that company, that organization was really aligned. I think, and there are times where I think an organization feels in flow. Like there's a time where you hit flow. But most people that I've talked to in very, very successful, I mean, they're ducks, right? Alignment's the duck, right? They look really aligned up top, but they are paddling like a mother underneath, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel aligned. It doesn't feel that there's no frustration.
Yeah.
We're I mean, Dunning-Kruger effect. We're a lot more aware of what can go wrong than you can go right.
Yeah. As
you start getting more and more success, especially you start talking about scaling, when you get into that scale mode, you're on a high wire.
Yeah.
If you look at high wire artists, it looks really scary and it looks really dangerous. And it is, if I were to do it, it's not that dangerous for them because they're trained professionals. They know what they're doing. But you know what? The moment they get a little bit cocky, the moment they get complacent, the moment they lose a degree of attention because they think they got this, well, then it, suddenly becomes dangerous.
Right.
It's like my brother said to me when we were flying, when I was on a plane with him one time, he said, there's like a number of principles of physics that make this impossible, but there's one that makes it possible. So as long as that one's working for you, you're fine. Right. So when you're in that alignment, like if there's not bad frustration, Patrick Lencioni, 5 dysfunctions of a team. What's one of the top dysfunctions? There's no disagreement. There's no argument. Right.
Yeah.
Bring 5 strong executives with a good point of view who care deeply together. Ask them to discuss what, the path forward, the process, whatever the strategy.
Yeah.
You know what Henry Ford said? Henry Ford said, if no one disagrees in here, then you're not needed. Right. Yeah, there's going to be disagreement. Yeah, there's going to be passionate debate. Yeah, it's going to be frustrating. And sometimes you're not going to get your way and you're going to be angry. Sometimes you're not going to get your way and it's going to turn out you were right.
Yeah.
And that's going to be frustrating. And that's bad frustrating. But I haven't done anything in my life that mattered that didn't have frustration involved.
Yeah.
Right. So what I think is the myth is the experience, is what we have, what comes to mind. Right. So we have this artificial myth of Skittles and rainbows and bluebirds singing and relaxing. And when you talk about business where the rules are constantly changing and you've got all kinds of external forces, there's someone who's trying to eat your lunch.
Yeah.
Is that frustrating? Yeah, it's frustrating. People do irrational things. Is that frustrating? Yeah, it's frustrating. So it goes back to, is it important? I mean, why is it important? Right. Why is it important? Why is alignment important? What is the job to be done? Right. That, focus on that. And that's where alignment comes from. So here's the new thought. Because actually, when you shared this topic with me, I'm like, oh God, I remember being on stage at Inbound talking about this. And I'm like, what can I say fresh about this? I don't want to just go back to the oldies. And I actually have a fresh perspective here.
Okay.
When people talk about alignment, the way they approach it is they approach it alignment in the how, alignment in the process, the methodology.
Okay.
Everyone's in lockstep. Everyone is behind each other right? That's not where alignment comes from. Because the problem with that alignment is it has no resiliency. The moment something happens that's unexpected, that team has nothing to do. That has no idea what to do.
Yeah.
Right. Resiliency comes from, and robustness and vitality comes when there's alignment in objective, when there's alignment in destination, when everyone is aligned, when everyone is clear on the objective, the waypoint, the destination, the inflection point, the milestone, whatever you want to call it. When there's alignment to destination, what it does, and I would say in understanding of constraints, like alignment around destination and context, then it frees the genius and it frees the diversity. And yeah, people are going to take different paths to that destination. Because guess what? If it's at all important, there are subsets of activities that are rinse and repeat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
They're algorithms. But by the way, if you can, if you're at a point where you said I should have algorithm type alignment, then humans shouldn't be involved. Right?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
So humans are, so when we talk about military precision, it's called commander's intent. Everyone is clear on the destination, on the objective, on the context, on why it's important, on what this leads to, so that when shit happens and the helicopter breaks down and the radio isn't communicating and there's a unexpected solar flare and there's a group of something else that wasn't in the recon, and you're adjusting like a what with no time to check into home base, everyone still understands where they're going and how to make the trade-offs and choices, etc. And by the way, what that does is it creates greater agency. Right? I'm in control of my destiny. Because by the way, the next time you have to do quote unquote the same thing, if it can't be done by computer, it's not going to be the same thing. Right? No two sales processes are the same. No two conversations are the same. There's always a degree of difference. It might be as simple as, I was really awake versus I'm really tired. Right? But that changes everything. And so where we need to spend more time aligning is on the objective, on that point, on that center point, right? Where we tend to spend more time complaining about alignment is on methodology and individual action. Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that way? Now, so I ask people why they do something a certain way, but that's more because I want to make sure, I'm assessing what's the intent. Where we're trying, are we aligned in the intent? Because again, you may make a decision and it may not work, and well, you're out of alignment.
Right.
Well, that's resulting. That's resulting alignment. Right. Remember, I've got a whole plan. I mean, I coached my son's baseball team. One year we won one game. Going into every game, I had a plan for how we would win. I wouldn't have been able to coach through the season if now sometimes that plan was completely destroyed before we got the first out.
Right.
I mean, I know one team we played, they were literally, their smallest person was twice as big as our biggest. But going into that first pitch, I still had an idea and a plan of what to do. Well, of course, we got our what's beaten. Does that mean my plan was wrong? I mean, my plan wasn't realistic in this case, but again, does that mean the decisions that I made
were wrong?
And what happens was, some people said, how did you get through that season? I said, actually, that season was less difficult to get through than other seasons where we were like 500, where I knew we could have been better. Right? Like when we lose a game when they're twice as big, hey, you only beat us by 30 runs. Shame on you. Right? I don't lose any sleep over that. It's we made that same mistake again. And what's interesting is when the more you focus on why'd you do that, the more you focus on that mini process, the more likely you create the environment where more mistakes get made and there's less alignment because people aren't free to operate.
Yeah. So are you saying that the reason alignment's so difficult is because we spend too much time focused on alignment and not enough time focused on what the destination is?
Yeah. Well, again, what's the objective? What, the destination, yes. I also think that we spend all our time trying to align our sales. We're trying to align our sales, our marketing, and whatever, when what we should be, if we're going to talk about alignment, it should be aligning to the market. It should be aligning to the customer, right? If I'm aligned to the customer, then by definition, I have alignment. But we spend far too much time pursuing this idea of internal alignment, which again, no one has been able to explain to me what it is until after the fact.
Okay. So they can say this is what it looked like because they then know what it looked like because it's after the fact.
Well, it's kind of like, I mean, there's a little bit of a success bias. Companies that succeed, we say they were aligned.
Gotcha.
Companies that went out of business, we say they weren't aligned. Problem is, if I start a business and I go bankrupt, no one pays me to write a book.
No?
They're I think it's Showtime. I can't remember but there's a series coming out that's basically the story of Uber.
Yeah. It's
Right.
yes.
It's gonna be
Yeah, I saw
fascinating. I
trailer.
mean, I can't wait for it to come out, right? Because I'm pretty sure when you look at it, when you watch it, there was no alignment.
No.
Certainly not what I would call alignment. Now there was really, everyone was committed, maybe overcommitted, maybe they should have been committed. But yeah, I think that like the term that I use, what I think, when people are talking about alignment, I think what they really should be talking about, I think what their intent really is about creating a high context culture.
So having everybody having understanding of what's going on. That's what you mean by a high context culture?
I don't. What do you mean by what's going on?
By, well, what you talked about as far as understanding of where we're going, understanding of what the goal is, what the outcome is.
I wrote a blog post. I think it was based on the book Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. The blog post was Strategy Kills. And what strategy provides is a diagnosis of the situation, a guiding policy, and a set of actions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first major step to high context. What game are we playing? What type of field are we playing on? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? Where are the constraints? You've seen us get much better at managing clients and dealing with more difficult situations as people got clearer that our philosophy is overserve to solve if that's necessary. If in doubt, overserve.
Yeah.
Right. And you know what's fascinating about that? We have less issue about being out of scope.
It is fascinating.
We have less frustration about it. Right.
Yeah.
Well, the reason is we're not in right or wrong. Is someone going to tell me I was wrong or I was right? It was, if you're going to make an error, make the error to overserve. Now, we also say overserve, don't overcommit.
Yeah.
And it took a while for that to take hold. It took people regularly saying, so-and-so asked for this, should I do it? And the response being, I don't know, should you?
Yeah.
Right. And that's
well, that goes back to what you talked about with agency.
Correct. Well, people are now more aware what's on their plate. They're more aware, well, okay, if I do this for this, what's happening for that? Right. So in essence, we give a whole lot less direction. And there's more understanding around the roles that people play, the commitments that are there, and the satisfaction has risen. So someone would say that's alignment.
Yeah.
And I'm down with that. That's alignment. Well, what got us to alignment? It got us, high context,
yeah.
which is, and we still don't have enough context. If someone says, "Are you aligned?" I don't. Oh my God, I'm aware of 10 times the issues. Then, right? Jess, have you avoided bad frustration?
No.
Because here's now, if you think about it, yes, we avoid. I mean, if we think about the bad frustration that we had 2 years ago, we don't have that.
No.
We have frustration at a much higher, much more complex, much more difficult level.
It's true. It's true.
It's like what I say. It's like a rubber band. If you don't stretch the rubber band, there's no energy.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, there's going to be conflict. We use the word stress. We misuse the word stress. The problem's not stress. The problem is distress.
Can you explain the difference?
Distress is negative. But I mean, there's only one type of person that doesn't have stress, and we call them dead.
There it is.
Right. You need stress to live. It's a
yeah.
Right. So that stress, I mean, they call it growing pains.
They do. They do. I think one thing that's interesting about alignment, and there's always this, I think there's this inclination of we need to have more conversations, and that goes to context as well. And it's interesting as we've done work to try to provide more context, make sure we communicate that outcome both internally and on the client side. We found that there's not necessarily a need to have more of those conversations. And there does seem to be more alignment with what's going on, what we're doing. There's definitely work to be done. But if you look at where we were
There's
2 years ago, yeah, there are always.
Done, right? If you look at, when we talk about context, there's context of destination, but there's also context of timing. There's timing context. That's where three zones of execution comes in, right? One of the mistakes that we all have, we're really good at identifying problems. We're really good at edicts to fix the problem. But what we don't bring into account is what's the time context associated to it, right? We were talking to a client yesterday. Actually, I was talking to someone again today. You need to look at the lens of adoption of this new CRM that we're going to roll out through the lens of 6 to 9 months, not through the lens of 30 to 60 days, right? Well, that changes a whole bunch of things, right? It's also, where's the next point that we're getting to? Okay, I'm going to count the proximity to the, to the next milestone.
Right.
I'm not going to count the mistakes. I'm not going to count the whiffs. It's why I'm not a fan of tracking hours. If you track hours, we focus on the wrong thing, right? One of the things that I'm finding that's interesting is the less I focus on hours, because there's the fear of, well, if you don't focus on hours, someone could take 8 hours to do a 2-hour task. What's funny is I find people were more likely to spend 8 hours on a 2-hour task when you track hours than when you don't, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you take 8 hours on the 2-hour task because you're figuring out how to do it your way.
Yeah.
Right. And then you begin to pick up themes and as you understand context. And then the other element is, okay, if it's a 2-hour task, why does it need to be 2 hours? Well, it needs to be 2 hours because these other things need to happen.
Right.
Right. And so if I don't understand those things, then, I mean, you know what it's like, Jess. We had an implementation that was the hardest implementation we've ever had. And it was not the most difficult.
No.
Think about that for a few minutes, everybody. Why was it so hard? Because we had no content.
Little time. Well, and very little time.
Well, you know what? What's interesting is we ended up having a lot of time. It was the longest implementation we've ever had.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? There was no context. Were we not aligned? I don't think we were any more or less aligned, right? But what I would say is because there was no context, you couldn't have alignment because there was no context. You can't have alignment without constraints.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where, and one of the things that helps with context alignment is what's important, what's the domino flow, what's the next key point. One of the things that that has helped and helped implementations is, we use the term day 2. Right.
Yeah.
It's a day 2 issue, which means post next element. So we're not gonna worry about that. Yeah,
and the other thing we use for pre day 2 for while we're in it is waypoints, which I think helps vastly both internally and with the clients. It's amazing. We had one person who works here who they kept asking, well, I know I need to do this I know I need to do this. I know I need to do this. I know I need to do this. And it's like, dude, that's after waypoint 1. And as soon as that got clarified, oh, okay, I don't even need to worry about this for the first 6 weeks or whatever.
And what's interesting is now we have the system where it doesn't even show up on their radar.
Yeah.
And there's less issue of not hitting the deadline.
Yep.
So you have less time. So again, intuitively doesn't make any sense. It's context. And so the problem is if we give you, if we put something in front of you that needs to be done, but doesn't need to be done now, well, that's a totally out of context environment. It's like, did you ever have a friend or associate that you knew and you knew them because they were at a certain place, like they worked at like a waitress or a bartender or somebody, and then you saw them in a totally different place?
Yes.
And
it's weird.
Half the time you don't even know who they are. The other half of the time it's like, God, I feel like I know you, but because it's out of context.
Yeah.
Right. The frame is the game. If it doesn't fit, you must have quit. The frame is the game.
Wow.
And when you look at it through that lens, I mean, the whole issue about sales has a different language and cycle than marketing has a different language and cycle than success has a different language. Those things go away when you look at it through the lens of production. I was just talking to somebody about marketing attribution. I said, look, I think the attribution game, unless it's a really short cycle, really simple process, this idea from awareness lead to revenue to attribute that, the problem with that is all it attributes is average. When in fact, what you need to do is you need to break it down to what are the 3 to 5 key inflection points that, and okay, so what's happening here? And so there are 3 different games.
Yeah.
When you look at it through that lens, all those alignment issues free up. What also frees up is the talent pool frees up. We're so obsessed about specific skill sets.
Yeah.
That we miss. I mean, I was talking to somebody that's looking to hire an SDR, and I said, look, if they've got a growth mindset, if they're willing to grind, if they're curious, and if they're coachable, they can be successable.
Yeah.
If they know the industry, okay, that's great. That's a learning curve that they can skip. If they know sales, okay, that's great. That's a learning curve they can skip. But those 3 elements, that's the context that I need in the right person.
Right.
And if you think about it, you look at what we're doing, and you look at what we're doing with the number of people that we have, and it really wasn't until we stopped looking for the same type of person that everyone else was looking for that we actually started saying, hey, you know what? This is the raw material that we need. Let's work from there. How does that fit into context? And so I think, we'd all be better off if we spent less time talking about align, because again, it creates the crew, right? That 8 people in the, whatever they call it, all paddling in absolute unison, which I realize we use that image on some of our covers for what we're doing to infer that alignment, to infer that precision. But that is a non-dynamic, very finite, very specific use, right? There's no resiliency there. As a matter of fact, if the wind's too much, it won't work. They'll tip over or something, right? I probably said something that's totally ridiculous because I don't understand crew, but again, those are wonderful, analogies. As I've said many, many, many times, we have a tendency to talk about business in the lens of chess, and the way we try to communicate really complex, as we say, 6-dimensional chess. I don't even know what that is, but chess is a game of perfect information. The truth is we're not playing chess, we're playing poker.
Yeah.
Poker is a game of imperfect information. And if you're playing poker as a professional poker player, you're in an infinite game, right? It's not about, did I win this game, right? And business is an infinite game. So we've got to stop taking metaphors that are different in kind, right? A finite game is not degrees different than an infinite game. And that's, that's my battle against alignment. I'm not anti-alignment. I'm anti what the word conjures up in people's minds. So they start pursuing things that actually take them away from their objective, a la it, everything's smooth and easy.
Well, I mean, I think that's why it's so difficult, because there's always this focus on it being smooth and easy. And when I think what you're saying is when you are aligned, it doesn't feel like you're aligned. So you're constantly fighting that.
Yeah. And well, I guess it depends how you view your aligned. Because if you view it in the context of making progress to our next waypoint, then you will feel aligned.
Yeah.
Right. And as a matter of fact, you'll embrace the differences. You'll embrace the variation. The best way to reduce the volatility of a portfolio is increase the variance, increase the diversity of your investments so that they don't correlate. But the image that we create for alignment is 100% correlation. When in fact, like just right off the bat, it's impossible because Jess, you are different than I am.
This is
And
true.
we can both be given the same task and we will do it. If left to our own devices, we will do it differently. And the worst thing that someone could do to you is say, you should do it like Doug. And the worst thing someone could do to me is to say, I should do it like Jess. But I'll tell you what, if we said, Jess, you should do it like Doug, or Doug, you should do it like Jess, that's better than what most people in essence communicate, which is you should do it like this theoretical in between that's neither you nor Jess.
Yeah.
So now instead of at least having one person doing it their way, you have no one doing it their way. And in pursuit of alignment, we create drag. By the way, here's what's interesting. If there's no resistance, there's no flight. There's no lift.
Yeah. Bringing it all back. So is what you're saying the like, so if you're looking at, driving alignment or fixing alignment issues, I don't even know if that's the right terminology, but is it making sure that you provide context around waypoints, the outcomes, the destination, versus trying to focus on making sure that everybody's in that lockstep, doing the same thing the same way, all synchronized?
Well, so what I would say is, if you're feeling a lack of alignment, that's a symptom. It's neither a problem nor a cause. It's a symptom. So if you feel like alignment's the issue, there's probably something, there could be something going wrong, but it's not alignment. So don't focus on alignment. It's likely a lack of context.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a lack of capability, right? I see a lot of people that are quote unquote out of alignment, but it's more someone's being asked to do something they're not capable of doing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not even context, right? That's a different element. I think you need clarity on the objective, clarity on why that's important. I think we have a tendency to talk about objectives as finish lines, when in fact they're starting lines. So the reality is, we're always pre-race.
I love that, because it's always, particularly with what we do and with clients, it's always the objective to them is always the finish line. And I think that it's such a hard concept to grasp and communicate. That's
so here's the interesting thing. If you think about it through the lens of 3 zones of execution, we live in zone 2, zone 3. We're in the enablement zone, the transformation zone.
Right.
The performance zone, that's the race.
Yeah.
And that's where I had an old manager who said, he wasn't old at the time, just old as in like a while ago. Said, I often get asked, is this a marathon or a sprint? And the answer is, it's a marathon run at a sprinter's pace. That's life today, right?
Yeah.
The performance zone, that's the race. That's the race. That's the race. But it's always, it's the end of the race is the beginning of the next one. And so we have a tendency to talk about the finish line, but we don't talk about why that finish line matters. How is that finish line leveraging the next starting line? What does that mean? I also think another element, and you knew that I was going to find a way to weave this one in, you've got to create content on the juice for the squeeze factor. A lot of times that's a lack of business acumen. Do people understand, are you a gross margin business? If that's the case, do people understand gross margin? Do they understand why, why should you spend less time doing this than that? There's all kinds of elements that lead into, if you think about context is the decision consideration criteria, right? So as you're making a decision, what should your consideration be? We oftentimes say somebody has bad judgment, when in fact they don't have bad judgment, they just have bad information.
Yeah.
And sometimes that information is a lack of information. Sometimes it's disinformation, right? How are we, affecting that? I know one of the questions that you asked me to prepare is what's the role RevOps plays in alignment, or something along those lines. How
to
fix alignment issues.
Yeah.
See, I think fix is the wrong word. Did you know that a plane is off course 95% or more of the time?
Yes, I knew that because you've told me before.
Right. Now, it's never a whole lot off course. It's constant course corrections.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's alignment. Right. So when we talk about fix, the natural state is out of alignment.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is RevOps? I'm going to use a term that I'm going to probably regret using, But RevOps is the context police.
Yeah.
RevOps is, their job is to look at, where's the context where it's moving. We have, one of the images that we use when we talk about why do CRM or other tech implementations fail, we have that old, there's the sidewalk that's designed, and then there's the walk path that's user experience. Well, in the world that we're in, where people are involved, let alone people outside of our company involved, market competitors, it's actually worse than that image. Because it's not like this is the design, this is the user experience. So my job is to match the design to the user experience. If I were to match that to the user experience, well, the user experience is going to have, it's not going to stay there. It's going to shift.
Right.
And by the way, there's not one user path, et cetera. So there's always fractures happening to context. RevOps lives in the world of Zone 2, Zone 3. Zone 2 trends more to tactical RevOps. Zone 3 trends more to strategic RevOps. So it's more about, too often RevOps ends up serving a compliance role in the bad level of compliance, as opposed to as compliance as a signal.
Yeah.
And RevOps is correcting, when in fact, if RevOps is, and I don't even want to say teaching, if RevOps is creating context, if RevOps is constantly creating context, and RevOps is constantly creating structure, reducing friction in some places, increasing friction in other places, to provide nudges and guides and constraints and so forth, then that context comes in, and alignment is the outcome, or the alignment is the byproduct.
Right.
But if alignment is the objective, that's like the difference between speed and velocity. Creating alignment doesn't bring me any closer to where I want to be. And by the way, it's probably easier to create alignment out of alignment with where I want to be, because if I were already on the course and speed to be where I would want to be, then I don't have to do anything.
Right.
If I need to change course to speed, then I need to change, and change means resistance. And that's so where you want to go is out of alignment, and you're not going to get there through edicts, especially today. And so look at alignment as a symptom, get clear on objectives, inflection points, waypoints, get clear on constraints. And when you start off getting clear, you're not going to be very clear, but if you keep doing it, you'll get better and better.
Yeah.
By the way, and it's about consistency. You don't come in and say, okay, everybody, today's alignment day. We're going to get aligned today.
It's not, that doesn't work.
It does not work.
No,
it actually creates disappointment. Like, I mean, outside of joking, it creates a very short term. It's like I'm running low on energy, so I'm gonna down a pound of sugar, right?
Yeah.
You get this quick burst of whatever, and you inflict a whole lot of damage.
Yep. No, I like what you said about you can't have alignment without constraints too, because I think you always think about it. It almost seems counterintuitive, because you think of that smooth path that we talked about, and so when I hear constraint, that seems the opposite of that. But it's actually a really good point. It's until you put those constraints up, like you won't have that context and that alignment that you talked about.
The best thing RevOps can do is to think probabilistically, not deterministically.
Yep.
There is no right answer. It is about making trade-offs. And so when you're not willing to I'll tell you the thing that kills alignment, the inability to say no. If you can't say this profitable client is not our core customer, is not our target customer, then you're not going to have alignment around your customer.
Yeah. All right. So viewing alignment as the symptom and the byproduct, not the goal, is the big takeaway.
And the single greatest thing that I think a management team can do is create context.
Yeah, I agree. We set out on with that as a point of focus. I think it was a little over a year ago, and it's been hard, but it's paying off. So I totally agree with that. And on that note.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. Having clear context to what it is you're doing is a big key to alignment. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, and share the episode. If you have any questions you'd like to ask Doug or Jess about alignment, our journey to alignment, or anything else RevOps related, email me at hannah@imaginellc.com or hit us up on Twitter @demandcreator. Until next time, remember, you can't solve your upstream problems downstream.